The desert wind had a habit of whispering secrets, dragging grit and ghost voices across the open plains before sunrise. By the time the first light broke over the horizon, the camp was already stirring, men cursing the cold, horses stamping their hooves, coffee boiling thick and bitter on the fire. It was a rough camp, half trail hands, half drifters, and the rest men running from something they'd never name out loud. Beyond the circle of wagons, a lone rider appeared, had pulled low, dust rising behind his horse like smoke from a dying fire. Caleb Vane rode slow, the way a man does who's used to being watched. His coat was faded, the leather dry and cracked from too many years in the sun. A scar ran down from his left temple to his jaw, not ugly, but deep enough to make men wonder how he'd lived through it. He said little when he arrived, just nodded to the foreman, paid his respects, and asked if there was work guarding the cattle line heading west. His voice was quiet, low, like a gun being cocked behind a closed door. The foreman, Bo Harris, squinted through the smoke of his cigarette. "You ride clean?" he asked. "Clean enough," Caleb replied. Bo spat and grinned. "Then you'll fit right in." The day grew hotter, dry as bone. Dust clung to everything, clothes, faces, lungs. Caleb spent most of it near the edge of camp, tending to his horse, watching the others through half-lidded eyes. He had the look of a man waiting for something to happen, though he couldn't have said what. Then he saw her. She moved between the fires with a pot of beans in her hands, sleeves rolled long despite the heat. Her hair was tied back, but strands of copper escaped, glowing when the sun hit them. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with a calm, careful grace, like someone who'd learned to move quietly in a room full of tempers. Every man called her Cook, or Mara depending on their mood, but few said her name kindly. Caleb noticed the way she kept her eyes down, never meeting a man's gaze for long. When she set the tin plates on the table, one of the ranch hands reached for her wrist, joking about needing a little sugar with his beans. She pulled away fast, laughing softly to ease the tension, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Caleb said nothing, just took his plate when it came to him and thanked her. She looked startled, as if the word itself was something rare. He saw the bruise that afternoon when the wind lifted her sleeve, dark against pale skin, fresh enough to make him look away out of respect, though it burned behind his eyes. She noticed his glance, froze, then tugged the fabric down quickly. "Burned myself on the kettle," she murmured, voice steady but thin. Caleb nodded once, not believing it, but not calling her a liar either. Some things, he knew, weren't meant to be spoken under daylight. When dusk came, the camp came alive again, the air filled with laughter and whiskey talk, the kind of noise men make when they want to forget how empty the land around them feels. Bo Harris poured drinks for his favorites, his voice carrying loud and mean. "You hear about the new hand?" he barked. "Silent type. Looks like he's seen ghosts." Caleb ignored the taunts. He'd heard worse from better men. As the sun bled out behind the ridges, the first stars began to show. The firelight threw long shadows across the wagons. Mara kept to her stove, scrubbing pots that didn't need scrubbing, keeping herself small and unnoticed. But the men noticed anyway. Bo came over, whiskey heavy on his breath. "Ain't you done yet, darlin'? Fire's warm. Come sit a while." She didn't look up. "Still got dishes." Bo laughed, leaned close enough for her to flinch. "They'll keep." Caleb's hand hovered near his belt. He didn't move yet. He knew better than to play hero without reason. The desert was full of men buried for speaking out of turn. But when Mara slipped from her seat and murmured something about fetching water, the foreman's laughter followed her into the dark. Caleb watched the shadows move beyond the firelight. One man rose. Then another. Quiet laughter. Boots crunching gravel. He stared into the flames, jaw tightening. His mind ran through a memory he wished he'd lost. The sound of another woman's voice, another night, and the way blood looked under moonlight. A scream echoed faintly, muffled quick. The sound caught like a hook in his chest. The campfire chatter faltered for a moment, then picked back up uneasy. No one moved. No one ever did. Caleb rose without a word. He followed the noise past the wagons, where the shadows grew thicker. The air smelled of dust and whiskey. A lantern swung from a branch, throwing light over a broken pot on the ground and a streak of red where a hand had slipped against the dirt. He saw her there, on her knees, trembling, clutching her arm. One of the men laughed low, a sound more animal than human. Caleb stepped into the light. The men turned. "Evening, stranger," one sneered. "You lose something." Caleb didn't answer. His eyes were on Mara. She met them for the first time, truly met them, and something in her gaze pleaded for silence, not rescue. He gave a slow nod, a promise instead of words, and backed away. He turned and left them standing there, their laughter echoing behind him. But his mind was already counting. 4 of them. One had a limp. Another carried his pistol cross-draw. He sat by the dying fire till the moon rose high. The men stumbled back laughing, boasting, pretending the night hadn't turned rotten. Mara didn't come back. Caleb stood, his hand resting on the saddle horn, fingers drumming. He thought about leaving. He'd left towns before. Left bodies, too. But something in her quietness stayed with him. The way she'd worked through pain without asking for help. The way her eyes had flickered when she saw his scar, as if she recognized something in him that the rest couldn't see. When the first light came, he found her by the stove again, moving slow, face pale. The bruise was worse now, swelling along her jaw. She didn't speak, just poured him coffee. He said softly, "You're leaving, ain't you?" Her hands shook as she poured. "Can't. They'd find me." "Maybe not." Her eyes lifted. "Why would you care?" He didn't answer right away. The wind blew through camp, stirring the ashes. "Used to know someone with eyes like yours," he said finally. "Didn't help her when I should have." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She just nodded once, understanding more than he wanted her to. Beau's laughter broke the moment. He swaggered past, slapped her hip like she was part of the furniture, and said, "Coffee's cold, sweetheart." Caleb's hand twitched. He steadied it. Beau looked over his shoulder. "Something wrong, cowboy?" Caleb's voice was calm. "Not yet." Beau grinned, thinking it a joke, and walked off. The sun climbed higher. Horses snorted restlessly. Somewhere a crow cried out. Mara packed her things that evening, tried to be quiet about it. Caleb caught her near the wagons, tightening the strap on a small bag. "Where you heading?" he asked. "Don't know. Just away." He studied her, then glanced at his horse. "Take him," he said. "He'll ride smooth." She shook her head fast. "I can't." "Take him," he repeated, voice firm now. "He knows the road south." She hesitated, looking toward the men's tents. "They'll kill you if you stand in their way." His eyes, once dull from years of dust and regret, glinted hard. "They'll try." Morning came slow and colorless, the sky a pale wash of ash before the sun rose to burn it clean. The camp was quieter than usual, too quiet. Even the horses seemed uneasy, stamping their hooves in the dust as if they smelled something foul beneath the calm. Caleb Vane stepped out from his tent, the last of his coffee turning bitter on his tongue. He'd slept little, his mind caught between anger and restraint, listening for sounds that didn't belong. Behind the cook tent, the ground was disturbed. A broken pot lay in the dirt, half buried in a thin trail of blood that led toward the water barrels. The air carried the smell of iron and something else, fear, maybe, or shame. Caleb crouched, fingers tracing the ground where boots had scuffed deep grooves. For sets of prints. Heavy. Male. Moving together. He rose slowly, eyes narrowing toward the main fire pit, where the men were beginning to stir. Their laughter came easy. Too easy for what the night had been. Mara appeared from the side of the tent, her face hidden beneath the wide brim of her hat. She moved stiffly, holding a basket to her chest. When she saw him, she froze. "Morning," he said, voice calm, quiet as the dawn. She hesitated, then nodded. "Morning." He looked at the dirt, then back to her. "You dropped something." Her eyes flickered to the broken pot, then away. "Just fell is all. Clumsy hands." The words were practiced, too fast. She bent to pick up a piece of clay, her sleeve slipping enough for the morning light to reveal a deep bruise blooming along her wrist, darker than the ones before. Caleb's throat tightened. "You sure that's all?" Her voice cracked slightly. Don't make it worse. He took a slow breath. Step back. Who was it? She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Her silence was enough. He turned his gaze toward the men, Bo Harris among them, grinning, whiskey-eyed even before breakfast. Caleb's pulse drummed behind his scar as he walked across the camp. Conversations fell quiet. Spoons paused midair. The wind carried the smell of brewing coffee and tension thick enough to choke on. Bo looked up when Caleb's shadow fell across him. Well, if it ain't the quiet rider, he drawled. You come to bless the morning, or spoil it. Caleb's jaw flexed. You got men who don't know how to treat a woman. Bo laughed, a harsh sound. Hell, Caleb, you talking about the cook? That little thing's tougher than she looks. Ain't no harm in a bit of fun. The camp went still. Even the wind stopped for a moment. Caleb's voice dropped lower, softer, more dangerous. You call that fun? Bo smirked, unbothered, enjoying the eyes on him. She didn't complain much. You want to play her night. You'll find yourself short on armor. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, trembling with what hadn't yet happened. Caleb's hand hovered near his holster, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice a quiet promise. You'll regret those words. Bo leaned back in his chair, grinning wide. Ain't the first time someone's told me that. Caleb turned and walked away, his boots crunching slow and deliberate in the dirt. The men exhaled only after he was gone, murmuring low, nervous laughter chasing the tension out like smoke after a gunshot. All day, the camp felt wrong. Mara stayed close to the fires, silent and pale. Caleb kept his distance, though his eyes never strayed far from her. He watched the men, too, the way they avoided him, the way Bo's laughter grew thinner, edged with something like fear. By sunset, the desert burned gold and red. The sky stretched wide and merciless, like an open wound. Mara packed quietly behind the cook tent, wrapping her few belongings in an old blanket, one tin plate, a wooden spoon, a folded dress with torn seams. She moved like a ghost, trying not to make a sound. She didn't see him approach until his shadow crossed her path. You're leaving, Caleb said. She stiffened, hands tightening around the bundle. Don't try to stop me. He shook his head. Wasn't planning to. Her eyes darted toward the edge of camp. If they wait before I'm gone, they'll stop me themselves. Bo doesn't like being defied. Caleb studied her face, the raw determination beneath the fear. You've got someplace to go. No. Then I'll get you there anyway. Her lips parted, confused. Why would you help me? He didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he just couldn't bear to walk away again. They led the wagon out under the cover of darkness. The moon hung low, silvering the dry brush and the rocks beyond. The night was alive with the hum of insects, the whisper of the wind through the sage. Caleb checked the harness, the wheels, the mule's bridle. When he lifted the left rear wheel, his hand came away sticky with pitch and sawdust. Sabotaged. He cursed under his breath. Someone had loosened the spokes. If she'd tried to cross the ridge, the wheel would have shattered, sending her tumbling into the ravine. Mara saw the look in his eyes and knew. Her breath caught. They did it. He wiped his hand on his coat. Yeah. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. There's no leaving this place, is there? Caleb glanced toward the sleeping tents. Shadows moved faintly inside, laughter echoing from the saloon tent up the hill. Not by wagon, he said. He went to his horse, unhitched it, and led it over. The black gelding snorted, restless. Take him, Caleb said, tightening the reins into her trembling hands. She stared at the animal like it was made of gold. I can't ride your horse. You can tonight. Her voice shook. They'll kill you if you stand in their way. He met her eyes, the faint moonlight catching the scar across his face. They'll try. For a long moment, she just stood there, caught between disbelief and something close to faith. You don't even know me, she whispered. Don't have to. She climbed onto the saddle, her hands clumsy, afraid. Caleb adjusted her stirrup, checked the cinch, and stepped back. The horse tossed its head, as if it already knew the road. Head south, he said. Stay to the dry bed. You'll find a town by dawn. She looked down at him, eyes shining with gratitude and terror both. "What about you?" He glanced at the dark horizon, where the campfires flickered like dying stars. "I'll stay long enough to clean up what's left." Her throat caught on a sob. She didn't let out. "You'll get killed." Caleb smiled faintly, an old, tired thing. "I've been dead before." She held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded and kicked lightly. The horse moved into a trot, hooves whispering over the sand. Her figure faded into the canyon's darkness until only the rhythm of her ride remained, echoing soft and steady until even that was gone. Caleb stood still, listening to the quiet that followed. It wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that came before thunder. Behind him, one of the tents rustled. A man coughed, mumbled something, rolled over. The fire crackled low, casting long shadows that crawled like snakes across the ground. Caleb turned toward the saloon tent, where laughter had started again. Beau's voice carried over the wind, loud and crude. "Guess the cook learned her place." The sound twisted something inside Caleb. The old feeling, cold, familiar, rose from deep within, coiling up through his chest. It had lived there once before, back when blood was the only answer he knew. He'd buried it years ago, but now it clawed free again. The saloon windows rattled in the wind, dust hissing against the glass, like whispers from the desert. Noonlight poured through the door slats, bleaching the wooden floorboards and cutting long shadows between the tables. The smell of whiskey, sweat, and stale tobacco hung thick in the air, clinging to the men who hadn't yet sobered from the night before. At a corner table, 4 of them sat hunched over their drinks, laughing too loud, their laughter sharp enough to make the piano player hesitate mid-song. The youngest, with a scar on his lip, slapped the table. "Ain't seen a woman run that fast since the preacher's wife left town," he said, and the others howled. Beau Harris grinned, pouring himself another shot. "Hell, she thought she could walk away from us like she was better'n the rest. We just reminded her what happens to pride in Dry Creek." He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under him. "Ain't no harm done. Girl live. Maybe she'll learn." "Maybe she won't," someone muttered, smirking. They didn't notice the room had gone still. Didn't notice the piano player's hands freeze above the keys, or the bartender stop mid-polish, staring past them at the door. The double doors had swung open, letting in a wave of dry heat, and a man. He stood framed in the sunlight, tall and silent, had brim low enough to shadow his eyes. His coat hung loose, the fabric shifting slightly in the breeze. Beneath it, the handle of a revolver caught the light, dark, worn, old as its owner. Caleb Vane took one slow step inside. The boards creaked under his boot. Beau looked up, smirk fading as recognition hit him like a chill. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, forcing a laugh. "The quiet one. Thought you rode out." Caleb didn't answer. He walked farther in, his eyes passing over the 4 men, like a judge reading names from a list. He stopped just short of the table, one hand resting near his belt, the other hanging still as stone. The piano player swallowed, his foot lifting from the pedal. The last note died, echoing faintly before dissolving into silence. Caleb's voice was low, quiet, and hard. "You talk too much about what you did." Beau smirked again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You aiming to preach?" Caleb's gaze didn't waver. "No, just came to shut you up." The man with the scar on his lip snorted. "You got a death wish, cowboy." Caleb looked at him once. The man's hand twitched toward his holster. Thunder cracked. For a moment, no one breathed. The echo of the gunshot rolled through the saloon, swallowing every sound in its path. The man with the scar fell backward, chair splintering beneath him, his hat rolling across the floor. Caleb's revolver hung loose in his hand, smoke curling from the barrel. Beau's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Jesus," someone whispered. 3 men remained. Caleb holstered the gun, slow and deliberate, then took a step back. Now it's quiet enough to listen. One of the others stumbled to his feet. You'll hang for that." "Maybe," Caleb said, "but you'll be in the ground before I do." The man bolted for the door. Another followed, knocking over a chair in his scramble. Only Beau stayed, his hand trembling near his whiskey glass. "You think you can scare me?" he said, voice shaking. Caleb's tone was steady, almost gentle. I ain't here to scare you, Bo. I'm here to end what you started. Outside, the two who'd run were already shouting, dragging the rest of the town into the storm. A rider appeared on the ridge moments later, dust trailing behind a fast horse, badge catching the sun. Sheriff Dalton Reeves had heard the shots before he hit Main Street. Inside, Bo tried to stand, but the whiskey and fear made his legs betray him. You ain't law, he spat. You ain't nothing but a killer. Caleb's eyes were cold, endless. I was once. Bo's laugh cracked apart. That right? That what this is about? You still think you're the butcher of Pecos? The name hit the air like poison. The few who hadn't fled crossed themselves, backing toward the walls. They'd all heard of him. How he'd once ridden with a gang that bled 3 counties dry. How he'd vanished one night after a shootout that left 12 men dead. A ghost, some said. A curse. Caleb didn't flinch. I remember every man I buried. Didn't plan on digging more. He stepped forward, the wooden floor groaning beneath him. But you heard her. That makes this different. Bo's hand twitched toward his gun, but Caleb's voice stopped him. Don't, he said quietly. You won't make it halfway. The saloon doors banged open again, and sunlight poured in. Hold it right there. Dalton Reeves stood in the doorway, gun drawn, his eyes darting between them. Caleb, he said, disbelief thick in his tone. God Almighty, it is you. Caleb turned slowly, meeting his gaze. The years fell away between them. 2 men who'd once ridden together before the badge came between them. Dalton's jaw tightened. I thought you were dead. Almost was, Caleb said. Dalton stepped forward, gun still raised. Put it down, Caleb. Don't make me do this. Caleb didn't move. He raped her, Dalton. The sheriff's hand faltered slightly, but he steadied it again. I know what he did, and I'll see justice done. But you ain't the law anymore. Caleb's eyes burned like coals. The law don't reach this far. You know that. Bo laughed weakly, desperate. Sheriff, arrest him. He murdered Tom. Dalton's voice hardened. Shut your mouth, Bo. Bo blinked. What? Dalton turned his eyes back to Caleb. I can't let you kill again. Caleb's tone was soft. Then don't make me dig alone. The words hung between them, heavy as iron. Dalton hesitated. He'd buried too many men because of this one before. But he'd also seen the kind of evil Caleb had a habit of stopping. He saw it now, sitting in front of him. Bo's trembling hands, the blood still on his knuckles, the lie in his eyes. Caleb saw the decision forming in the sheriff's face. You know what's right, he said. Bo tried to stand, voice cracking. You gonna let this madman? Dalton fired once. The bullet hit the wall beside Bo's head. I said shut your mouth. Bo froze, then collapsed back into the chair, shaking. The sheriff lowered his gun, eyes never leaving Caleb's. If I turn around right now, he said quietly, and walk out that door, I won't hear a thing. You understand? Caleb nodded once. Dalton took a breath, heavy and resigned. You always did your own kind of justice. He turned, stepping back toward the door. Outside, the street buzzed with whispers, the crowd waiting for the next sound of thunder. Caleb moved closer to Bo. His voice was almost tender. You could have stopped. You could have walked away. Bo's breath came fast, panicked. Please, please, I didn't mean. Caleb's gun came up. One shot. The echo rolled down the street, scattering crows from the rooftops. When Dalton returned, the saloon was empty save for the body slumped in the chair and the smell of smoke. A single bullet hole marred the mirror behind the bar. The sheriff removed his hat, sighed, and muttered, Guess you dug your own grave after all. He stepped outside, squinting against the glare. Far down the trail, a lone rider moved away from town, dust rising behind him like a ghost vanishing into the horizon. The townsfolk stared, silent, until the rider was gone. Then someone whispered the name, half fear, half awe, the butcher of Pecos. Dalton shook his head, mounting his horse. No, he said softly to no one in particular. Not anymore. The wind howled low through the canyon, carrying dust, echoes, and the scent of fear. The sun burned white above the rocks, turning every shadow sharp enough to cut. Far ahead, 3 riders fled across the winding trails, tiny figures swallowed by red stone and silence. Behind them came another rider, steady and relentless, a black horse pounding through the desert like a heartbeat that refused to die. Caleb Vane leaned low in the saddle, his eyes narrowed against the glare. The reins cut across his gloves, sweat and grit stinging every breath. He could see their trail plain as scripture, broken brush, hoofprints deep and hurried, dust still unsettled. They'd gone toward the border, thinking the desert would save them. It wouldn't. The canyon walls rose high on either side, carved by centuries of wind and water. His horse's hooves struck sparks from the rock, the sound echoing like gunfire in the distance. Caleb's mind was quiet, but his blood hummed with the same rhythm that had carried him through 100 hunts before. He'd told himself this one was different, that it wasn't vengeance this time, just justice. But the line between the two had long since blurred. As the trail curved through the narrows, his thoughts slipped backward, unbidden, unwanted. He'd ridden this way before, years ago, under another name. Back then, gold had been his gospel, and blood the only price he knew how to pay. They called themselves the Pecos Riders, thieves, killers, ghosts who came in the night. He'd been faster than all of them, colder too, until he met her. Clara. The memory came like light through smoke. Her laughter, the way she'd stitched his coat without asking, saying a man who kills for a living should at least look decent doing it. He'd thought her untouchable. But greed was a hunger that devoured everything. His own gang had raided her town for the silver shipment she guarded. When she refused to talk, they beat her. Then they left her hanging from the well post at dawn. He'd found her there. And when he did, something in him broke for good. By sundown, every man who'd ridden with him was dead. The Pecos riders were gone, and a new ghost took their place, the Butcher of Pecos. The name still followed him through saloons and wanted posters, though he hadn't killed for coin since. Now he hunted the kind of men he used to ride beside, the ones who smiled when others screamed. Ahead, the trail split. Caleb dismounted, crouched low, and pressed a hand to the dirt. 3 sets of tracks had become 2. One horse limping, the rider thrown or worse. He mounted again and spurred forward. The canyon narrowed, the sound of hooves bouncing back at him from every wall. Then came the echo of a gunshot. 1. Then silence. He slowed. Around the bend lay a horse, foaming and panicked, reins trailing in the dust. Beyond it, sprawled on a ledge of stone, was one of the men, face down, unmoving, blood spilling dark over the rocks. Caleb recognized him by the silver buckle on his belt. Another echo rolled through the canyon, closer this time. Caleb dismounted, crouched low, revolver in hand. The cliffs around him seemed to breathe, the wind whispering like voices that had never found rest. He saw movement up ahead, a shadow darting between boulders. The second man, the one who'd begged in Dry Creek, when Caleb shot his partner. "Don't shoot," the voice cracked. "I give up, you hear? I'll leave the territory, swear it." Caleb's boots crunched softly as he stepped forward. The man's pistol lay tossed aside. His face was pale, streaked with sweat and fear. "I didn't touch her," he stammered. "It was Bo made us." Caleb's gaze stayed level, the revolver steady. "You followed." The man's throat bobbed. "Please, I got a wife. A son." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then you should have thought of them before you became the kind of man they'd have to hide from." The man's breath hitched. "Please." A single gunshot cracked through the canyon. The echo rolled away like thunder. Caleb stood still for a long moment, the gun smoking faintly in his hand. When he holstered it, his fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what he'd just done again. He mounted up, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Only one name remained, Bo Harris. The trail wound higher, the canyon opening into a maze of cliffs and plateaus. The light was fading now, gold bleeding into red, the air thick with dust and the smell of gunpowder. Caleb's horse climbed steadily, hooves clattering against the stone. Then came a faint metallic click, a hammer drawn back. Caleb froze. "Drop it." Bo's voice called from above. "Ain't no sense dying tired." Caleb turned his head slightly, scanning the ledges. Bo had taken cover behind a rock outcrop, his shadow long against the setting sun. "You've been busy," Bo sneered. "Didn't take you for the hero type." Caleb's voice carried clear. "Ain't hero work. Just cleanup." Bo laughed, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. "Cleanup? You're filth same as me. You think I don't know who you are?" Caleb said nothing. Bo's tone changed, venomous now. "I heard stories. The butcher of Pecos. Thought you were a myth. But hell, you're real. Guess monsters don't die easy." The word struck deep, sharper than bullets. Caleb's hand twitched near his holster, but Bo fired first. The shot ricocheted off the rocks, splintering stone near Caleb's shoulder. He dropped low, rolled behind a boulder, and returned fire. The canyon filled with thunder and dust. Bo cursed, reloading fast. "You ain't leaving here alive." Caleb's voice came low, cold. "Neither are you." They traded shots, each blast echoing like judgment. A bullet grazed Caleb's arm, tearing fabric and flesh. He ignored the pain, focusing on Bo's position. Another shot, then silence. Out of bullets. Caleb called. Bo's laugh came ragged, desperate. "Got one left for you." Then another sound broke through the canyon. The click of a hammer, not Bo's. A woman's voice trembled through the stillness. "Don't." Bo froze, twisting toward the sound. Mara stepped from behind a rock, Caleb's old revolver gripped tight in her hands. Dust streaked her face, but her eyes burned fierce in the fading light. Caleb's chest clenched. "Mara, what the hell are you doing here?" She didn't look at him. Her voice shook but held steady. "Finishing what you started." Bo turned his gun toward her. "You should have stayed gone, girl." Caleb moved before he thought, rising from cover, firing once. The shot hit Bo's gun hand, spinning it away. He staggered back, blood running down his wrist. Mara didn't flinch. She raised the revolver, both hands steady now. Bo laughed weakly, eyes wide with disbelief. "You think you'll kill me? You. He's the devil, not you." Mara's voice broke. "Then maybe it's time the devil had company." Her shot rang out sharp and clean. Bo jerked once, then crumpled to the dust, his breath rattling out slow. Caleb stood frozen, the echoes fading around them. Mara lowered the gun, her hands shaking as the silence returned. Bo's lips moved faintly. "You're him," he whispered, blood bubbling on his tongue. "The butcher." Caleb holstered his gun. "I was," he said quietly. Bo's eyes glazed over, and the wind took the last of his breath. The canyon was still again, save for the wind curling around them. Mara's shoulders trembled. "I didn't want to kill him." Caleb stepped closer, gently taking the revolver from her hands. "Then remember that. You didn't want to. That's what keeps you human."